The neighborhood always pretended to be friendly, but the polished lawns and quiet driveways hid a tension that only revealed itself when something disrupted the perfect illusion. For years, the homeowner had blended into the background of Oak Springs, a meticulously regulated community run by an overactive HOA board. Despite the stern rules and constant monitoring, life had been manageable. That changed after the accident that left the homeowner permanently disabled, forcing a move from independence into carefully managed movement supported by a wheelchair. What once felt like a quiet community now felt like a maze of obstacles. After months of physical therapy, paperwork, and emotional adjustment, installing a simple wheelchair ramp became the final step toward reclaiming some sense of normal life. The homeowner researched every guideline, checked accessibility laws, reviewed the HOA's architectural rules, and hired a licensed contractor. Everything was meticulously legal. The day the ramp was installed, the homeowner finally felt a freedom that had been missing since the injury. Rolling up and down, the gentle slope felt like reclaiming ownership of the home again. But the neighborhood did not respond with empathy. On the second morning after installation, a notice appeared taped to the front door. It was written in the familiar handwriting of the HOA's most vocal and self-important enforcer, Karen Wexler, the unofficial queen of complaints. Karen believed she was the guardian of neighborhood aesthetics, the protector of property values, and the self-appointed spokesperson for anyone who had ever muttered a passive-aggressive comment about hedges or trash bins. She claimed the ramp violated the community's architectural uniformity, citing a made-up rule about unapproved exterior alterations. The homeowner read the letter with growing disbelief. The ramp was medically necessary, legally protected, and fully compliant, yet Karen insisted it needed to be removed within 10 days or the homeowner would face escalating fines. She argued the ramp disrupted the visual harmony of the neighborhood and could negatively impact resale value. For the homeowner, it was a gut punch that combined indignation with exhaustion. A ramp designed to provide freedom was being treated like an act of vandalism. When the homeowner reached out to the HOA board, the response was chillingly predictable. They deferred to Karen's judgment, claiming she had documented community concerns about the ramp. They dismissed medical necessity and HOA regulations as external factors. Behind the scenes, neighbors whispered that Karen simply disliked anything that made the community appear imperfect or human. Disability made her uncomfortable, and the ramp was a reminder she didn't want to see. Days passed and the notices became more aggressive. Karen walked by daily, taking photos, measuring angles, and scribbling complaints. She treated the ramp like a personal insult. The homeowner's frustration grew into determination. If Karen wanted a fight over a medically necessary ramp, she would get one, but not in the way she expected. The homeowner began documenting everything. Every visit, every notice, every moment Karen trespassed onto the property with her clipboard and phone camera. Quiet cameras were installed outside, capturing her obsessive behavior in high definition. The homeowner reviewed the HOA bylaws, state accessibility laws, and federal HOA guidelines. The more research was done, the more obvious it became that the HOA had violated multiple disability rights regulations. Each notice Karen delivered became another piece of evidence. The tension escalated when Karen loudly informed several neighbors that the homeowner was lowering the neighborhood's standards. She implied the ramp was an unnecessary eyesore and suggested the homeowner was exaggerating medical needs. Her gossip carried through the neighborhood like wildfire, but not everyone supported her. A few concerned residents began approaching the homeowner privately, sharing their discomfort with Karen's behavior. They revealed she had a history of targeting anyone who didn't fit her rigid vision of perfection. Despite the stress, the homeowner realized something important. The ramp wasn't the real issue. Karen was, and she was breaking laws with every step she took. That realization became the spark for the strategy that would flip everything. As the 10th day approached and Karen gleefully prepared to impose fines, the homeowner finalized a detailed report. It included timestamps, footage, copies of every notice, and copies of HOA regulations. State accessibility officials were contacted. Disability rights advocates were looped in. Even a local news tip line received a quietly worded message. When the deadline arrived, Karen triumphantly marched toward the home with her clipboard, expecting compliance or conflict. Instead, she found a quiet, steady homeowner waiting with the calm confidence of someone holding every card in the deck. And so began the unraveling of Oak Springs' self-appointed tyrant. As Karen left that day, confused by the homeowner's sudden lack of fear, she had no idea the storm gathering behind her. The homeowner was done being pushed around and the first domino had just tipped. The morning after the supposed deadline passed without any fines being paid or ramps being removed, the HOA board received a packet that immediately disrupted their routine. It was meticulously organized, professionally formatted, and backed by laws none of them had ever bothered to read. The homeowner's report documented a month-long pattern of harassment, targeted discrimination, and repeated violations of disability rights. Each piece of evidence was time-stamped, labeled, and verified. The board was stunned when they saw the footage of Karen trespassing on the homeowner's property, leaning over the ramp with a tape measure like a detective analyzing a crime scene. There were videos of her photographing the home at dawn, muttering angrily and packing back and forth with exaggerated frustration. Every bit of it contradicted her claims that she had only been performing routine HOA duties. What truly alarmed the board, however, were the legal citations. The homeowner had referenced state accessibility laws and federal ADA protections requiring HOAs to accommodate disabled residents. Failure to do so could result in heavy fines and legal penalties. The homeowner had skillfully highlighted sections showing that Karen's demands were not only baseless but discriminatory. Alongside the packet, several agencies had been CC'd, including the State Housing Authority, the Department of Justice Disability Division, and a local organization known for exposing HOA misconduct. The board members realized they were not dealing with an uninformed resident. They were facing someone who understood their rights and was prepared to defend them. Karen, however, was oblivious to the impact of the homeowner's report. She strutted around the neighborhood as if the situation was handled and victory was inevitable. She boasted about restoring order and protecting property values. She told neighbors the ramp would be removed any day now. Her arrogance only made the situation more satisfying for those who quietly rooted against her. While the board scrambled, the homeowner kept gathering more evidence. Footage now included Karen trying to peer inside windows, reviewing the ramp from different angles, and even lecturing passersby on how standards must be maintained. Each action documented her obsession and further solidified that the ramp wasn't the problem, her discrimination was. Soon, state investigators reached out. They scheduled a site visit during which they noted the ramp's safety and compliance while reviewing the homeowner's recordings. The investigators saw the notices Karen had issued, each one written with escalating aggression. They raised eyebrows at the HOA's refusal to acknowledge medical necessity. Their report would later become the turning point of the entire case. Meanwhile, the homeowner quietly prepared the final piece of the puzzle, a complete timeline of every interaction between Karen and the ramp, a summary of the harassment, screenshots of neighbors describing Karen's gossip, and crisp images of the ramp that showed it posed zero visual or structural issue. All of it was packaged into a single comprehensive file that the HOA board dreaded but couldn't ignore. By the end of the week, Karen received a notice of her own. She didn't appreciate the irony as she tore it open. The HOA had called an emergency meeting and attendance was mandatory for her. Karen assumed the meeting was to finalize the removal order for the ramp. She didn't realize it was actually to discuss her misconduct. The homeowner, meanwhile, prepared one final step, sending everything to the local news reporter who specialized in unfair HOA behavior. With one email, the story was out. And Karen had no idea her empire was about to crumble. When the emergency HOA meeting was announced, the neighborhood buzzed with curiosity. Karen arrived early, clutching her binder of complaints like a trophy. She seated herself at the front, expecting praise for her vigilance, but the atmosphere in the room felt unusually heavy. Board members whispered nervously, avoiding her eye contact. A projector was set up at the center, facing the crowd. Karen interpreted all of this as preparation to support her cause. She had no idea what was coming. The homeowner attended quietly, rolling into the room with a calm confidence that contrasted sharply with Karen's jittery excitement. Neighbors filled the chairs behind them. Some came out of support, some out of morbid curiosity, and some because Karen's obsessive behavior had finally given them something to talk about. When the meeting began, the HOA president's tone was uncharacteristically serious. Instead of announcing violations, he began by outlining the board's responsibilities under state and federal law. Karen shifted uncomfortably as the list included accommodation requirements for disabled residents, regulations she had never bothered to learn. Then the lights dimmed and the projector clicked on. The first image displayed wasn't the ramp. It was a still frame of Karen trespassing on the homeowner's property at 6:12 a.m., measuring the incline with exaggerated precision. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Karen turned red, insisting the footage must be taken out of context, but the next slide contradicted her protest. It showed her returning later that afternoon, sternly documenting the ramp from multiple angles, stepping over onto the homeowner's lawn repeatedly. The board member paused before advancing to the next slide. This one showed the aggressive notices Karen had written. The tone, the claims, and the threats made it clear she had overstepped her authority. Karen's face twisted with disbelief as the audience reacted with shock and judgment. The HOA president continued, displaying the homeowner's report and the legal citations. The board had confirmed everything. Karen's actions violated state accessibility laws, and the HOA, by supporting her, had put themselves in legal jeopardy. As the evidence continued, Karen's confidence evaporated. She tried to argue, attempting to spin her actions as community service, but the footage kept exposing her. Each clip revealed more: her packing, her gossiping, her obsession with the ramp that posed no threat to anyone. The room shifted. Neighbors who once tolerated her dominance now saw the truth. Karen wasn't protecting anything, she was harassing someone with a disability, weaponizing her position to impose her will. The board concluded by announcing that not only was the ramp fully approved, but any further interference would be treated as discrimination. Karen was stripped of her enforcement authority, placed under investigation, and warned that legal actions could follow. The homeowner left the meeting to the sound of whispered apologies and supportive nods. Karen stormed out in humiliated silence. But the story wasn't over, not with the news story looming. 2 days after the HOA meeting, the local news station aired the story. The segment, titled "Disabled Homeowner Targeted by HOA Over Wheelchair Ramp," featured blurred footage of Karen trespassing, screenshots of notices, and interviews with disability rights experts who condemned the HOA's actions. By morning, the neighborhood was buzzing louder than ever. Cars slowed down near the homeowner's house, not out of judgment but curiosity and sympathy. Online comments flooded the news station's website, overwhelmingly supporting the homeowner and criticizing the HOA. Karen's world began to crumble. Parents who once waved politely now avoided her. Neighbors she had bossed around for years finally found the courage to distance themselves. Even board members who previously backed her became icy, eager to avoid association. State officials opened an investigation. Disability advocates contacted the homeowner, offering assistance, resources, and potential legal representation. The HOA scrambled to review every rule, every complaint Karen had ever filed. It became clear this wasn't an isolated incident. Karen had been abusing her authority for years. The homeowner, meanwhile, focused on quietly rebuilding a peaceful life. With the ramp secure and the community now aware of the discrimination, the home once again felt safe. But the storm for Karen had only begun. The state's investigation uncovered a long pattern of misconduct by Karen. Her history of targeting elderly residents, single parents, and anyone who didn't meet her strict aesthetic standards painted a disturbing picture. Complaints long dismissed resurfaced. Testimonies poured in. The HOA was forced to acknowledge that Karen had been acting far beyond her authority. Legal consequences followed. Disability rights officials issued warnings to the HOA and mandated training. Karen herself received a civil citation for violating accessibility laws. She was removed from all HOA positions permanently and barred from participating in any enforcement-related activities. Her reputation collapsed. Neighbors she once controlled now openly expressed relief at her downfall. Her influence disappeared overnight. For the homeowner, the victory was satisfying but bittersweet. It wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming dignity and autonomy. The ramp, once a source of conflict, now stood as a symbol of resilience and justice. Yet the story still needed closure. Months passed, and the community gradually healed from the tension Karen had created. The HOA adopted new policies prioritizing accessibility and fairness. Several new board members were elected, people who valued empathy over aesthetics. The homeowner regained independence, navigated the neighborhood freely, and formed new friendships with neighbors who appreciated the quiet strength displayed during the ordeal. Karen eventually sold her home in silence, leaving without fanfare or sympathy. Her departure marked the end of an era defined by control and fear. Oak Springs became a better place for everyone. The homeowner's ramp remained exactly where it belonged, solid, safe, and legal. It represented not just accessibility but triumph over discrimination. And so, the tables had been fully turned. What began as harassment ended as transformation for the homeowner, for the community, and even for the HOA itself. The story that started with a ramp ended with empowerment, proving that when someone stands firm for their rights, even the most stubborn obstacle can be overcome.